Hi everyone, and welcome back to the third, video of the series on Linux. So in this video, we are basically going to talk about the file permissions in general, like what about the users, what is the file, and everything around it. Now, when you actually go ahead and look into any of the application, you see that we have different users with different access control as well. And for example, a simple example would be a WhatsApp. When you create a WhatsApp group, you must have observed that someone has got an access of an admin, someone is like a normal user and stuff like that. And so, it's the same thing which goes to, for example, a Facebook. You created a Facebook group and you have someone like an administrator, someone editor, and someone like maintainer and stuff like that. So this permission that we are basically dividing on a user level and on a group level is something which is normally called as an access control list, ACL. And hence we are basically going to see how can we implement an ACL into our Linux. So even in Linux you can also have the same concept where you can create groups, you can create multiple users, you can decide like which user and which group gets a permission to what sort of the permission to a specific file altogether. And those are the things that we are going to discuss in today's video. So let's just start by running through our first command. So first what I'm going to do, I'm going to run a command like ls space -l. So when you look into an ls space -l, you see a series of information which is basically being you know uh, shown at you. So obviously this looks like a timing which is there, date and time when these files and everything got created. This is like a user who created this file, and this is basically a permission level of those user, which means that hey look, this is a normal user who have created files, what sort of the file permissions is there. So let's try to debunk this and look into in a much more detailed manner. uh, Here you see this is a user and this is basically a group. How do we create user and group? That is also something that we are basically going to look into. But before that, let's start from this. Now, if you closely observe, this entire file, right, you must have observed that there are 10 characters, and I'll just write it down over here: hyphen r w r dash dash r dash dash. So how do we divide this, right? So this three, and we are basically converting them into the form in a three parameter, and then we are left with this. Okay, so first basically talks about what type or what is a type, which means is it a file, is it a folder, which means a directory, or is it a linked file. So the first one basically defines the type. So if it's a dash, which means it's simply a file. As you can see, it's a normal file. If it's D, you'll see it's a directory. And if it's an L, which means it's a linked file. Linked files are like a shortcut link which you can actually see in your Windows machine as well, where you have some link on your shortcut icons and everything which you see on your normal Windows. You click on it and the website or the application basically gets opened up. That is basically a linked file. Coming back to the you know the remaining thing, which is actually very much important for us to understand. Now when we talk about the the ACL in general, which is an access control list, the generic discussion which basically comes down is there we are having a three type of user level. One is basically a user, like he is the one who is basically a creator, who has the all the access to it, right? Who is the main owner of the file, you can say. Then we have the group, right? So you can create a group, right? And then finally there are other people. So just imagine that there are like 5 users: user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, user 5, right? And you mentioned that these 3 users, let's have, 1, 2, 3 users are in the same class, okay, studying in the same university, same class. So obviously they are, let's say, a part of the group X, okay. These users 4 and 5 are from different schools, different, and all of them, all the 5 people are their friends, right? So they basically created a group called as group X, GX, right? And if they basically upload any files, right, any file, let's say f1.txt, right, into this group, then in that scenario, only the people from these groups should be able to have the access, right? Or they can decide, hey, look, should we really give an access to user 4 and user 5? Maybe that's a, that particular, file they have uploaded is probably about a normal GK, right? A general knowledge, some PDF or some text file is there. And in those kind of scenario, the user 4 and 5 would be the, might just get some sort of an access. So these, in this scenario, user 4 and 5 is called as an other. This user 1, 2, 3 is part of group X. So GX is basically a group, and users are U1, U2, and U3. All these respective, users are basically the normal user altogether. Okay. So this is the, entire scenario. Now talking about, we basically represent user as U, group as group, and others as O, UGO. That's something that we basically, relate to. Now on the permission level, how do we define a permission level in Linux? So in the permission level, we have a read permission, a write permission, and execute permission. Read permission means when you are opening a file and you are reading the content of the file. You don't have an access to any, modification or anything. You're just reading the content of the file. That is a read permission. The write permission is where you have an access to even edit the file, delete the file, or even to create a file as well. That's basically called as a write permission. X basically stands for execute, which means you have the right to execute. So for example, if it's an, obviously this file is not an executable file, but if it has it, if it was like an executable file, some script, right, some software or something, so those sort of the file consist of an X permission, which is to execute some sort of the file. And then we have a dash, which stands for no permission at all. Okay, so if it's a dash, no permission. Now mathematically what we tend to do is, like, what in terms of Linux, what we have done, we have represented them with some relative number. So R is a read, it has been provided a 4, write is 2, X is 1, and obviously no permission is 0. So you get a total of 7. If you get a permission of 7, you say, hey, this particular permission has a read permission, has a write permission, and also has an execute permission altogether. So 7 means, like, they have all the permission. Okay, so that basically clears out the basic. Now if you look into this file again, uh, and I divided them into 3 parameter, right? Now, the first is going to talk about you, the second is talking about the permission level of group, and the third is basically talking about the permission level of the other people, okay, who is not part of the user and group. And here you can see the user is Prashant today and also as a group. So what do we mean by a user and group are the same? So in Linux, when you create a user account, by default, a same group account also gets created with the same username. Okay, and this is a specific group where only the user who got which has been created is part of the. This is a default way how the Linux basically handles things internally. But if you want, you can create a specific group and assign those permissions to people and then see around, the ecosystem. Okay. Okay, so now next, in this scenario, let's take an example of this scenario. Okay, in this scenario, if you see the other has a permission of read only, which means usually what we do, read, write, and execute. If it's in dash, which means no permission, which means the other user who is not part of the group can only see the read the content of the file, right? That's a read permission. The G means a group has also the read permission. However, the user has both the read permission and the write permission. If I basically have to write this down in terms of number, this read is 4 pointer, write is 2, and this is a 0, right? 4 plus 2 is 6. So for user, you write 6. For group, it just have a read permission, you write 4. For other, it's just a read permission, you write 4. So all in all, this entire ecosystem has, this file has a permission level of 644. So if you see some numbers like, hey, the permission is 755, 644, or something on that line, you see the permission level and decide, okay, fine, this 644 means 6 is for the user, 4 is for the group, or 4, and the last 4 is also for the other users. UGO, user are the owners. Okay, don't confuse the owner with others. A lot of time, a lot of people I've seen in the past usually gets confused about it. Okay, so don't get confused on those terminologies. So user, group, and others. Okay, so that basically takes us to the next set of, once the thought process is clear, let's go ahead and see like how can we basically modify these permission levels altogether. Now this is a part where the command lines come into play. So in the command line operations, what we are going to do is, let's start from a very basic, right? Which is like, hey, changing the permission level. So as you can see, the permission for this file is 644, right? If I have to change the permission level, I'll just run a command chmod 755, for example. I'm just changing the permission up to 755, right? Animals. And then you run it, and then if you just run it, you can see the permission level has changed. Now I have the read write executable, all the 3 permissions to the user. The group has just the read and executable permission, and so on and so forth, right? So this is typically how we are basically changing the permission. If you want to say, hey, look, I don't want to permission to be given for the other users, right? Which is like protecting my file not to be done. So 640 animals, this means, right, only the user and the people from the group can only see the access of the file, and no other people will be able to access. So how do we do this in a testing way, right? So let's do this entire operations from this scratch. Okay, I'll take this example from a various from a famous TV series called as Mr. Robot. If you have not watched the series Mr. Robot, I highly recommend you guys to go ahead and watch the Mr. Robot. So in this scenario, I'm basically going to create 2 groups called as F Society, right? And the other group called as the E Corp. Okay. And so these are going to be the, 2 group, F Society and, E Corp, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to, create couple of uh, users around it. So one of the user would be Elliot. Elliot is like the actual, uh, the main character of this, and is part of the group called as a society, right? So I'm going to create a group user called as the Elliot. Okay, and I'm going to create another group called as Tyrell, user called as Tyrell, who is part of an eCorp, right? And then we're basically going to create a safe ecorp folder. I'm basically going to create a safe ecorp folder, and I'm going to create two files inside it. One is going to be a public.txt file, which means anyone can see this file, right? Other one is going to be a private.txt file, which means only the person from the ecorp people would be able to see the content of the file. Okay, so title, this is a kind of an ecosystem that we are basically going to create. So this is a group, this is a user that we are going to create it. And for the simplicity, I'm going to create the password of every user would be the same username. So for password for the Elliot will be an Elliot, password for title would be title as well. So let's simply go ahead and first start creating a user account. Okay, so the first command to basically create a user account would be we run sudo user add, and let's say Elliot. Now remember, I'm basically creating a user add command. So user add will basically create a user called as Elliot, but there's a problem. The problem would be that if you see in most of the file, right, when we are basically creating any of the user directory, there is a specific directory called as inside the home directory for the user gets created, right? So this is like a default directory. So when I basically logged in as a Prashant Day directory, like Prashant Day user, you must have seen that I am by default have a my own space called a /home/Prashant Day, and I'm basically inside that directory. Okay, so I can simply go ahead and work things around it. So what I'm going to do is I also want whatever like Elliot user gets created or the title user gets created, I want them to have their own directory to play with. So if you want to have some sort of the situation, you can just write -m and then like Elliot, and it'll ask me for my password. You do it. Now what about sudo? Sudo is running as an administrator user. So Prashant is an administrator user in this scenario. So when you're running as a sudo user, it gives you kind of the same vibe. Okay, so now I have a user called as an Elliot. Let's change the password for this. Sudo password and Elliot. Now this will basically create a password for Elliot. As I mentioned, for the simplicity of the video, I'm basically creating the same password. Similarly, I'm just going to create another user called as title, right? And the password for title. Okay. Okay, so I have now two users altogether. Similarly, if you want to look into that, how do we see that this user got created? There's a specific file called as /etc/password where you can actually see the list of all the user that is there. So as you can see, the Elliot user is there, right? Its home directory has been created. It has a bin slash as such, like the shell command permission to be there, and that is a specific user number assigned to it as well, the user ID we say. Okay, so we do have these sort of the ecosystem in place. So we have multiple users. So let's say, for example, if I have to delete a user, so let's basically, why don't we just go ahead and create another user called as PK. Now if you notice, I didn't create minus PK, so that will also give me an idea to show you that since I create a user called as PK, you notice that a folder name did not create, as I mentioned. But for title and Endure, the folders are there because of -m. And but if I just run the password command once again, you see the PK user got created, right, all together. Okay, it does not have a home folder being created. I will have to manually create the home folder in order for a PK to have it. Okay, so but if you just want to delete this user, you can use sudo user del and PK. So you just run it, and now you can see that we don't have a PK user anymore. Okay. So user del is a command to basically go ahead and delete those users as well. Okay, so next let's go ahead and create a group now. So now the user part has been created. Let's try to create the group. Okay, in order to group, the command would be, so let's clear it out, sudo and group add, right? And I'm basically creating a group called as f society. Similarly, I'm going to create a group called as ecorp. So I basically created two groups, okay, all together. Similarly, if you want to see the list of all the group, you can see scat slash etc slash group. Okay, and there you can see like the F society and the ecorp group are created. As I mentioned, like whenever you create any user account, a default group with the same name also gets created. Just like this, you can see in the Elliot and scenario as well that these groups have been basically being created. Okay, taking back, continuing the entire discussion once again. So now we have these users, the groups have been created, but still we have not assigned any user to the group. Okay, so I still need to assign Elliot to the group F society, right? So how do I assign that people? So for that I'm going to use a user mod command. So the command is sudo user mod, right, minus a g, and then I'm going to specify the name of the group, society, and the user who wants to assign. So I am going to assign that. Now here the hyphen ag, a means append, g is the name of the group that I'm basically going to assign to it, which means I'm appending a user called as an Elliot into the group. How do I identify that uh, Elliot is part of which group? So let me just clear it out. So I just run a command like groups and Elliot. It will show me Elliot is part of an Elliot group and also part of an F society group as well. Okay. Similarly, if I have to assign like title into the group called as ecorp, remember a user can be part of multiple groups. There's no limitation to it. So groups, title, right? And I just get an idea of like title is part of that group called as title and ecorp. Okay, so that basically takes us to the idea. Now also there is another command like an id, and you can also search for an Elliot that gives a complete idea about the Elliot. What's the user id, what's the group id of the Elliot, what groups it is part of it, right? It basically gives a complete idea with an user id, ids of every user and the group that it has been part of. Now let's move and try to see if I can just log in as Elliot as well, right? Or probably as title. So let's log in as a title. So how do you log in? You type su space hyphen and the Elliot. So okay, let me just run login as title. So I'll just log in as title. Now it asks me for password. I have set the password which is title, and you can see I have logged in. So who am I? It shows title, right? I'll just clear this out. I'll see like pwd. As you can see right now, I am in my title folder, right? Who am I once again, just to show you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm basically going to create a folder called as safe ecorp, right? So my folder got created, right? And you can see the permission level of this, which means anyone can come inside this folder, right? Everyone has an access to executable, but the title just has the access to edit, and also people from the title as well. Okay, so we can still we can go inside this folder and try to create some file. So let's go ahead to save ecorp, right? And now I'll just create a file called as the public. Okay, so let's create a public file. Hi, this is public file. Anyone can basically view this file, and I'm going to create a private file as well, private.txt. Okay, hi, this is private file. Okay, so now you can see the permission. So obviously right now the by default the permission is in such a way that anyone can basically see the profile, right? Read the content of the file, and same goes with the public level. Obviously I need to basically change it, right? For public level I'm still fine that I want it in such a way that the public file can be read and written by people from the Safety Corp, but it can also be accessed and read by other people, which means I'm totally fine with the permission level, but I still need to change that, who should be able to change. So instead of title as a group, I want safe ecorp as a group to basically come down. So anyone who also comes into safe ecorp, any other user who comes across the safe ecorp, they will be able to go ahead and edit the file. So this is basically going to be the file. So if you just want to change the group of it, right? So how do I do chgrp? Chgrp basically change it, talks about changing the group. So I'm basically going to change the group of this to ecorp and of the public file, right? Sorry, it's basically going to ask me for the part title. Okay, it's my bad. chgrp, no, because tile does not have the permission to run as a sudo user. Never mind, because since title is an object, is an admin to it, tile will be able to do it. Okay, so public file can be edited by people at a ecorp, can be edited by title as well, but can be read by other people, right? How about the private, right? Private is something which uh, title would like to do. So ch group, and we can actually change the same thing ecorp for private.txt, right? And now you can see that the group has been changed, although I don't want other people to basically read. So this should be, so right now the permission is 664, and since I don't want them to write, so 640. So let's change the permission to 640, chmod 640 for private.txt. Okay, now you see that we do have a private.txt file got created. Okay, which is totally fine. Now in this scenario, what we tend to do is we can actually go ahead and see as part of Elliot user if Elliot is able to access this file or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into it. But before that, I'll also look into a permission level of permission level on this parameter. So ls-l/home, and I can see who can actually come down to title user, right? So title user does not allow anyone to be part of the other people, right? So other people won't be able to come to the title user. We'll also have to change this specific thing as well. Okay, but anyway, so for now, like, let's exit it. You just run an exit command and you come out of an title user. Okay, so right now we are at this folder. If I want to go into the you know uh, you know title user, you see it says permission denied and rightly said, because title does not allow us to basically go inside the file, right? But if I want, I mean, since I'm a admin user, so I can still run a sudo command, type out my password, and I can do, which means any admin can go inside and do anything of a user account. That is something which is which an admin has the power to do it for you. Okay, so once this has been done, let's move on to the next set altogether, which means we are basically looking into the you know uh, before logging into the Elliot, let's look into one more parameter, which is okay. I want to basically change the ownership of this file. So uh, you know my which is I am as a Prashant Day, I basically want to change the complete ownership of this animal. So right now the ownership is with Prashant Day as a user, and if I want to change an ownership to, let's say, to Elliot. Elliot is my best friend, and I want to basically change the permission. So what I can do is I can just change the permission to, you know yeah. So for that the command is chown command, right? And I can just change the permission of to Elliot, to the file, let's say, which is an animals.txt. Now if you look into it, Elliot is basically an user to it, right? So Elliot is a user, Prashant is basically a group, obviously, which means Prashant Day can access to the file as well, right? Which means I should be able to access the content of the file. But if you see, like, if I should I would I be able to edit the file? No, I won't be able to edit the file anymore. Okay, so I won't be able to edit the file anymore. Why? Because now I don't have an a write permission, right? Only a Elliot user will be able to edit the file. Okay, given back, now going back to the same discussion, right? So as basically the whole objective was to um, to basically change the permission level. So if you have observed, for title user, title basically created this title folder, but not everyone is allowed to be accessed. So right now the permission is 7, 5, and 0. Let's allow other people to go inside the folder. So for that I'll just do sudo chmod 755 to title, right? So since you have done that, then if you want to go inside as a title use, inside the title, you should be able to easily navigate. Okay, uh that's okay. So let me just clear this out and log in as a Elliot user. So now it's time for an Elliot. So right now the Elliot has been logged in. So as you can see, who am I? So it's an Elliot user who have already logged in. Let's go to the title folder. Okay, so cd dot dot, and you can see the title folder is literally there, and you can see the permission level, which means Elliot should be able to go inside this folder as well. Okay, pretty much good. So Safi Corp, again, an Elliot is allowed to go inside it. So inside the safe ecorp, right? And now you can see a public and the private file are there. Technically, Elliot should be able to edit the public file, right? Hi, this is the content. But if you ask Elliot to basically edit the file, it will say public.txt is unwritable. Why? Because Elliot does not have permission to edit the public.txt file, as it is can be seen from here. On the other hand, what about the private content? So if you see the private content, private.txt file, Elliot does not even have an access to read the content of a private.txt file. So that basically takes us to the entire permission level altogether. So I hope this is something which is basically being cleared out, on how do we change the permission level, how do we quickly add everything around it, right, and things like it. So moving forward from here, now we'll look into some of the advanced part as well, which is uh, you know in detail, like what are the other things which is basically possible, right? So let's first exit from it. I'll just clear this screen, and now we are going to discuss about a specific permission level called as the setuid and setgid. Okay, there are two advanced permission level, setuid and setgid. Sorry, my bad. Right, and a sticky bit as well. Okay, but anyway, I'll just focus right now on the setuid. The same concept goes on to the others and to the group side as well. Now, setuid is basically a permission level on executable file. Allows user to run the file with the permission of the file owner, not the user running it. So when you're basically how things work around. So let's stick with a practical scenario. Okay, we were into the DevOps learning, right? And I was basically trying to run the animals.txt. Okay, so when I am basically trying to run the animals.txt file, there are a set of questions which the Linux basically asks to see if this is the right person who has the right permission to basically work things around or not, right? And in those scenarios, the series of questions are basically, hey, does this user have the permission to run this file, right? So when I'm basically running a cat command, right? So first question, a Linux asks, does this user has the the user who is basically running, which is in this case is Prashant, does this user has the access to run the cat command, right? Permission to run the cat command. And the answer would be probably a yes, because all the user has the access to run the cat command. Okay, which is good. Then when you're running this cat command, after running this cat command, the second question basically is asked, does the user has the access to open the content and read the content of the animals.txt, right? Read or not, because right now I'm just running a cat command, which is a read operation, and the answer is yes. If the both of the answers are yes, you see the content of the file, right? And that's how basically the equations system works. Here before this, the user also sees who is running the command. So when you are basically running the command, who is running the command, and the answer is Prashant Day, and all the follow-up questions are around it. Does the Prashant Day has the permission to run a cat command? Answer is yes. Does the Prashant Day has the access to read the content of animal.txt file? The answer is yes. And when all the answers are yes and in this direction, the answer becomes I mean, you can see the content of the file. However, there is a specific permission called as the setuid, right? Now, the setuid basically means you are running the permission, you're running the command, or you're running any the command or any file as the owner of the file. Okay, what does this mean? Which means if I was supposed to run a cat command, right, and the user asks who is running this, and if the cat has a permission of set user id bit being set, it's a special permission level specified as S. If this special permission is being set, in that scenario, then the answer is, even if I'm a Prashant who is running this cat command, but if the cat has a special permission, then the question becomes a bit different. It's like, who is running this command? And the answer is not Prashant Day. The answer is the specific user who have created the file, who is the user of the file. And then following to that, all the answer basically changes down. So let's see to this example. Okay, so I'll basically log in again as a title, okay, to basically show you this, right? So I'll just go to save ecorp, right? Okay, now what what title date is title basically Tidal basically decided to create a spatial software which is basically storing all the files, and uh, which is a special command which can read the content of the file, just like a cat command, but he wanted to make it a bit different name altogether. Okay, fine. So you can actually do that, right? So cat and all these files are executable file situated somewhere. So if you just go to a cd slash user, right, slash bin, you should be able to see the list of all the commands. So you can see like the cat command, which we are basically literally running. The cat should be here, right? It's an executable file altogether. So you can actually see the the list of all L, and I'll just do a grep cat to basically show you the you can see the cat command, right? So cat is literally situated in this particular directory called as the user slash bin. Okay, so now I'll just go to the safe ecorp, right? And I'm basically going to copy this cat command, right, in the current directory. So as you can see, the cat command is there. I'll just rename this cat command to, let's say, Arab biryani. So I'm just going to name it as a biryani. Now if you just look into the ls-al, which means a biryani command is there, which means dot slash biryani, because an executable dot slash biryani. And if you just want to read any content of the file, you can see it's basically, because biryani is nothing, it's just a cat command, but I just have renamed this cat command. You can do the same thing with any sort of the command, right? And hackers use this all the time, right? You can copy it, change the name. If some specific command is blocked, you can actually bypass those commands using this basically technique altogether, which is like renaming it and then running through that name as well to read a specific content. Okay, but here what I'm going to do is whenever the user, when you are running this command, it says that which user is running the command, right? Obviously that's basically going to be Prashant, now in this case title, right? And is it the title who is running this biryani? Yes. Does the title have the access to run the biryani? The answer is yes, right? Does the title have the access to read the content of the public.txt file? Yes, and hence you are seeing the content of the file. But now title decides to basically change, wanted to basically create a some specific, because he learned about setuid but not in detailed way. He just wanted to basically change or add this particular permission to it, right? So how do you add this permission? So what you can do is like chmod, I know like the permission is right now the permission for biryani is 755, right? I can just add like 4755 and the biryani. Right. Now you can just see that setuid permission basically got accessed. The other way is to also run a chmod plus s and the biryani, and you can do the literally the same thing with all the other part as well, which basically sets up the setuid permission for both the user and the group as well. That's a generic way to basically work it out. Okay, now that setuid permission is in place, I'll just go as and this is like a tile, what tile basically created. Okay, now I'll just log in as Elliot. So Elliot basically came down, so slash home slash title, right, cd safe ecorp. Who am I? Right, as you can see, it's an Elliot. So I'll just clear this out once, right? Who am I? Right, it's an Elliot. So Elliot just noticed that there's a file called as biryani. He is very confused about what this particular file can be. So Elliot decided to just run this biryani file, right, and see what this particular file can be. Right, public.txt file, and he says like, hey, look, this is acting like a cat command. That's good. Now what if he knows that if I just try to run the private.txt file, I'm always going to see a permission denied. But what if that's biryani, right? And surprisingly, you can see this is the content which you can actually see from this private file. Now what actually happened? Well, the scenario is that because the style made a stupid mistake of keeping a setuid, which means now when you are basically trying to run this file, the answer is when the Linux asks question who this person is running a command, the answer is not Elliot, but the answer becomes title, and hence the entire flow changes out. Now it's not title which is running Elliot which is running anymore. It's a title, and hence the title has the access to the private.txt file, and also the access to run the biryani command as well, and hence you have a skill looking into it. So setting up the setuid is very useful, right? It's very useful, but it can also lead to a very dangerous. The question can be, why do we need these like setuid in the first place? A lot of system program, like for example a password command, right, need temporary elevated privileges to perform some sensitive action. For example, I want to basically run or change the user password. Now, this needs a temporary elevated permission to change the password. And in order to give this permission, you need this setuid command without making the entire program always run as a root. You don't want any program to run as a root all the time, but you want a specific permission to be there. But if it is not being done, carefully, then attackers, as you can see, Elliot basically exploited it badly and gain the privilege escalation. So when the attacker sees any file with setuid permission being there, right, it can result in a huge problem altogether, like a privilege escalation attack in this scenario. So be very careful about setting up the set user ID in this sort of the scenario. Now, as an attacker, for example, in this scenario, if I am an attacker, what I would try to do is I'll just run this command called as a find -- which is perm, right, parameters, and I'll also look for this, which means I'm trying to see all the file which has a set uid permission being in place. We'll just scan my all the files and we'll list down the list of all the files which has a set user id permission being set, and then from there onwards I can literally go ahead and see which file I can probably go ahead and exploit for my permissions. So as you can see, biryani is one of the file which has been there. So this basically useful for hackers, and also as a DevOps engineer, you probably would like to basically be very careful about it. So that takes us to the entire permission level that we have specifically talked about, and this is like a complete ecosystem altogether. My in the previous session I already explained you that we need to basically start practicing out this bandit. Now how do we practice out this bandit is something which I would suggest you to go ahead and probably check out my other videos, where I'll be playing some bandit challenges altogether. So that's it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you had fun in this series. If you know this much of, and if you saw all the bandit challenges, right, I can guarantee you that you are pretty much good to go in terms of Linux as well. So thanks everyone for watching. If you liked it, you know, uh, hit the subscribe button. Not something I love to say all the time, but you guys know what to do. Thank you.